Darren Arronofsky's film Pi follows Max Cohen, a reclusive and mentally fragile number theorist who believes that all of nature can be explained through patterns and numbers. In his dingy apartment in Manhattan's Chinatown, Max makes a discovery. He programs his homemade jury-rigged computing system to crack the hidden logic of the stock market. He believes that everything in nature, from stock markets to the growth of trees, follows hidden mathematical patterns. Running algorithms to decode these systems, he programs Euclid to search for numerical sequences behind stock fluctuations. One day, the machine malfunctions, spitting out a 216-digit number before crashing entirely. Frustrated, Max discards the printout, only to discover later that the number was tied to an uncannily accurate stock prediction. Max's worldview is inherently deterministic. He believes that everything in nature, including the stock market, human behavior, and religious texts, follows fixed patterns governed by mathematics. This is the essence of mathematical determinism, the idea that the universe is a system of knowable rules, and if we understand those rules fully, we can predict everything. Max's quest to find a code behind the apparent randomness of reality reflects this belief that free will is an illusion, and that events, even spiritual ones, are just outcomes of hidden structures. The 18th century mathematician Pierre-Simon Laplace proposed a thought experiment involving a hypothetical intelligence, now known as Laplace's demon, which, if it knew the precise position and momentum of every atom in the universe, could predict the future in its entirety. For Laplace, the universe is a giant deterministic machine. Given perfect knowledge of initial conditions and the laws of nature, every future event is inevitable. The series Devs takes Laplacian determinism and literalizes it with 21st century technology. A secretive division within a Silicon Valley tech company develops a quantum computer capable of simulating the universe with perfect precision, reconstructing the past and projecting the future not as probabilities but as certainties. This machine, grounded in the logic of cause and effect, reflects a universe where every event is already written, where free will is nothing more than an illusion. Every decision, every breath, every act of violence or love, inevitable, predetermined, and already encoded in the fabric of reality. Where Pi explores the psychological breakdown that results from glimpsing hidden cosmic order, Devs explores the moral and existential implications of living inside that order. If the future is fixed, can anyone truly be held responsible for their actions? Is morality even meaningful in a world without agency? Characters in Devs wrestle with these questions as the system reveals painful personal truths and foretells inescapable tragedies. Some accept the machine's determinism with passive fatalism. Others rebel, searching for cracks in the system, glimpses of uncertainty, quantum randomness, or the possibility of free will. Carl Jung developed the concept of synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences between internal experiences and external events that lack a clear causal connection. For example, thinking about an old friend and then getting a call from them a few seconds later. That kind of coincidence can feel so perfect that it seems like more than chance. Jung didn't think it was magic, but he believed that sometimes events can line up in ways that reflect deeper psychological or emotional patterns. In a deterministic universe, synchronicity might be the subjective counterpart to objective structure, the experience of meaning where the pattern isn't imposed but revealed. Occasionally, the fabric of reality tugs in a way that feels almost intentional. For example, say you're driving to visit a friend you haven't seen in years, and when you arrive, you notice the address, 1729 Maple Street. You pause. That number seems familiar. Then you check the time. It's exactly 17:29 or 5:29 p.m. You take it all in and think to yourself, what are the odds? In the movie Arrival, time is experienced non-linearly. All moments, past, present, and future already exist, but we experience them sequentially, one slice at a time. This reflects deterministic ideas. If all moments already exist, then everything is predetermined. They happen exactly when and how they're meant to. Consider Nirvana's trajectory and its endpoint. Kurt Cobain's death on April 5, 1994. We usually think of history as messy, full of randomness and noise, but sometimes it writes itself like a song. A mathematically neat, almost poetic structure runs through Kurt Cobain's and Nirvana's brief timeline. Nirvana was traveling through Germany toward Berlin in 1989. During the exact days the Berlin Wall came down. They played in Cologne on November 8th, Hanover on November 9th, Enger on November 10th, and finally in Berlin on November 11th, which was 2 days after the Berlin Wall came down. The date itself of their Berlin show, 11/11, is perfectly symmetrical, like a seam in the fabric of time. The Berlin Wall effectively came down on November 9th, 1989, when East German authorities unexpectedly allowed citizens to cross freely into West Berlin for the first time since the wall was erected in 1961. Nirvana's debut album Bleach was released on June 15, 1989, which is exactly 147 days before the fall of the Berlin Wall. Strangely enough, Kurt Cobain's death occurred exactly 147 days after the 4th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. This synchronicity is precise and mathematically neat, almost as if bracketing a historical shift in culture and consciousness, as if something had been scripting these moments, hiding symmetry inside chaos. Another very tight numerical synchronicity emerges around the release of Nirvana's breakthrough album, Nevermind. It came out on September 24, 1991, or as the date is written numerically, 9/24. From that date to Kurt Cobain's death on April 5, 1994, is exactly 924 days. 9/24, the date of Nevermind's release. 924, the exact number of days from its release until it was over. The release date of Nevermind encodes the duration to the end of Kurt Cobain's life, as if time had been stamped with an expiration the moment the album came out. It's a detail so mathematically neat, it reads like narrative design, something structured and algorithmic. Carl Jung believed that synchronicities often cluster around archetypes, universal patterns of experience that surface in dreams and myths. These symbolic motifs echo across time and cultures, shaping how we understand birth, death, transformation, and suffering. Artists often tap into archetypes, whether they realize it or not. In Buddhism, samsara refers to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, not only as a literal process, but as a metaphor for habitual patterns, attachment, and suffering. Nirvana, the name itself, refers to liberation from that cycle. Beings caught in samsara are propelled by craving and aversion, endlessly repeating patterns of existence. The cycle persists until something breaks it. But short of that, experience continues to circle itself, retracing familiar paths. Something like this cycle takes shape in the symbolic world, formed around Nevermind in Utero, and then Kurt Cobain's death. Nevermind features a now iconic cover, a baby submerged underwater, reaching for a dollar bill on a hook. This image can be read symbolically as a representation of birth into samsara, a being entering the world, immediately enticed by desire. The dollar bill suggests the lure of material attachment, a key driver of suffering in Buddhist philosophy. The title of Nirvana's next studio album, In Utero, literally means in the womb. In biological terms, it refers to the prenatal state before birth. In symbolic terms, it suggests a pre-birth condition, a state of becoming, not yet fully formed but moving toward manifestation. This idea is similar to the Sitpa Bardo in Tibetan Buddhism, which is the stage between death and rebirth. In that state, consciousness has left the old life but hasn't yet entered a new one. It's no longer part of what came before, but it hasn't fully taken shape in what comes next. It's a kind of waiting space, shaped by past actions, where the next life is beginning to form. So the imagery of the Nevermind cover symbolizes birth into conditioned existence, entry into a world defined by craving and attachment. Cobain's death marks dissolution, the departure from that form. Then, In Utero points to what follows symbolically, a return to the womb, like the bardo between death and rebirth. The cycle doesn't move in a straight line, it loops, repeating patterns shaped by what came before. In Buddhist terms, Nirvana refers to the liberation from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Interestingly, the intervals between the release of Nevermind, the release of In Utero, and Kurt Cobain's death are cleanly structured and segmented, like steps in an algorithm running to completion. There were exactly 728 days between the releases of Nevermind and In Utero. What's interesting is that if you multiply 7 by 28, you get 196, which is the exact number of days from the release of In Utero to Kurt Cobain's death. April 5th, 1994, the date of Kurt Cobain's death. What's interesting is that multiple numerical synchronicities all resolve on that one date. Nirvana was literally traveling towards Berlin during the exact days the Berlin Wall came down. Their debut album Bleach was released exactly 147 days before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And if you look at the timing of Kurt Cobain's death on April 5th, 1994, it happened exactly 147 days after the 4th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Nevermind was released in 1991 on September 24th or 9/24. From the release of Nevermind to April 5th, 1994 is exactly 924 days. There were exactly 728 days between the releases of Nevermind and In Utero. And if you multiply 7 by 28, you get the exact number of days from the release of In Utero to Kurt Cobain's death on April 5th, 1994. The timing of the album releases in Nirvana's timeline creates intervals that should be random, yet numerical synchronicities all snap into place around that final date as if the date itself were necessary and its significance had been programmed into the timeline from the beginning. There's something oddly poetic in how these intervals create synchronicities that resolve almost algorithmically on that final date, April 5th, 1994. The date appears to act as a mathematical endpoint, suggesting that Kurt Cobain's death came at an appointed moment set by the strange mathematics of fate.